Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today and this week with a special selection where one of you tell me what I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Eric, which I think is a little funny because the one earlier today was from Tim. This one is no context, just Joanna Newsom leaving the city. So, a couple of things I've noticed. One, it looks like she is right next to a harp. I'm going to assume she's performing, playing the harp, and singing. Also, it is not even 4 minutes long, which I think is going to make it the shortest Joanna Newsom track we've ever checked out. Alright, let's dive into this, looking at the live version of Leaving the City on Later. Oh, on Later is the show, so just Leaving the City. That I was a really nice pickup note into the phrase.
What do you wanna do? Are we leaving the city on the black road through the gold fields while the fields are plowed towards what we are allowed?
It's really blowing my mind here. There is a lot of things going on rhythmically within one body.
The bridle bends in idle hands and slows your canter to a trot. We need to stop in increments, but can't commit. We post and sit in impotence. The harder you hit, the deeper the dent. We seek a name, we seek a fame and our credentials. Painting glass, trying to master incidentals. Bleach, a call, a leech, a dollar for my sins. The longer you live, the higher the rent beneath the pale sky. Beside the red barn, below the white clouds, is all we're allowed.
I love how the vocal runs here are in isolation, but it's a callback to the runs that we had in parallel in our opening verse. Yeah, this whole thing is polymeter. Her phrases don't line up with her hands, or vocal phrases, until every 4 bars. Well, every 12 beats, give or take. 4 bars of her vocals.
That is all I want here, to draw my gone spirit about beneath.
I don't think I'm gonna get it. I think it's almost over, but I'd love another listen to the fast section. What? There is nothing I can say to do that justice, I don't think, but um what I think I'm going to do is try to convince you that that was the opposite of easy. Like not even hard. Like if something is easy, it is simple, it is trivial to accomplish. Think of the exact opposite of that, and you get this performance. Um, and I'm really glad this was a live version because I don't know that I would have pieced together that she was doing both simultaneously because of just how bonkers that is. I think this is the first time I've seen Joanna Newsom do something live too, so maybe this is fairly common for her. This is fresh for me. I'm coming off of like 5 studio tracks listened so far, and I assume everything is done piecemeal in order to grab everything in perfection, you know? But maybe she, I mean, I am seeing there's like 4 thumbnails here where she is 100% playing and playing the harp and singing simultaneously. So it's possible this is more common than I expect. She also has one where she's playing piano, but that seems infinitely more accessible and easy to me. Um, okay, now that I've reconstructed the exploded brain I have, the more I listened to this, the more bonkers I realized that the performance was. And I think the magic trick here isn't that it's difficult, it's that it looks effortless. I think even if you don't understand what's going on here, you might say, "Oh, that looks kind of hard." But I think there's going to be the extent of it. And when I'm done with this, I think most people are going to be like, "Oh, that's not just hard. That that's quite skillful." So, to begin with, I don't know how to play the harp. I mean, I do. I have played a harp before, but it's not something that I know how to play, right? It's kind of like a guitar with a lot of strings. You put your finger on the string you need, you vibrate it. It's not like there's some wild science to this, some arcane knowledge in order to make music out of a harp. But there is a lot of knowledge into where notes are, how to play them. If there's fingering stuff that goes into it, much like a piano, the best fingers to use when you're at specific areas in order to achieve the simplicity of performance, the least resistance to play a line kind of idea. At the end of the day, though, unlike guitar, unlike drums, I feel like drumming and singing is so much easier than what I just witnessed. You're controlling all of your fingers like all of the time. There's this repeating line in the bass on this. It's 2 notes per chord, and when the chord moves, we just change what those 2 notes are. And we get a root and then a fifth, and then the new root and then a fifth, and then the third root and then the fifth. Wait, I think that helps me understand the polymeter. There's only 3 chords, but for some reason I thought at the beginning that our third chord existed for bars 3 and 4. We just held on to it, for the length of it to give extra weight to that chord itself. But it's possible, like I said, I need another listen on this for sure. There's a lot of stuff I missed, um, which is kind of wild because there's not a lot going on the surface, right? It's just somebody singing with some harp. There's so much complexity to this. I feel like this is how I talk every time we check out a Joanna Newsom track, where I'm like, on the surface, this is exceptionally simple and enjoyable, but when you dig between below that, there's so much freaking nuance going on. I don't know why. It's like the status quo for her. Simple on the surface, ridiculously complex if you do any bit of digging. You have the smallest little shovel and you've struck gold before you even got below the top of the dirt. Okay, so we have that chord, the chord progression on the low end. That is a relatively simple idea. But there is a bit of syncopation to it. It isn't just boom, 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 boom. It's not just a series of quarter notes. There's a syncopation to it. The second note is quite a bit shorter than the first and comes in just a hair after the rigidity of it. So boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. There's a bounciness to it. It's not that specific idea. That's kind of swingy, and this was not swung. But the idea is there, and that the first note is weightier, and that it is longer than the second. And it creates a bounce and a groove to the underlying element. Now, that rhythm is different than the rigidity found in the other hand playing the run. The run comes up all throughout this track, and it is constant eighth notes. The eighth notes are not all the time going, though. If I remember correctly, they either start on the and of one or on beat two to allow the first boom, that root note in our lower foundation, to provide the perceived first note of the run. So it almost sounds like we start low and jump up to the note to do our run. It is also only 3 or possibly 3.5 beats long so that we can create a space for the root note of the next chord to begin the run again. This phrase bounces between hands. All right, I want you to keep that in mind. There is almost a hocket going on if you perceive both hands as doing two different things. They are in different ranges, so it is sort of a pitch-based hocket, but the timbres are the same as it's all the same instrument, so I don't know if I'd necessarily classify it under a hocket, but it is in that same realm of composition where two opposite lines inform each other's parts and fill in the blanks. From this point, we introduce the vocals, which tend to line up with the run. And we actually hear some really crisp vocal runs in here, which I thought is really nice. The thing about the harp is that, at least here, the attacks are a bit heavier. You can certainly hear where each note begins. Something about a string at rest and introducing vibration to it, that you need to put kinetic force into it. That force is felt in the music. So there is a preciseness to the articulation of the harp playing, and she introduces that precision into her vocals as well. The way that she hits these notes and puts a little pause right before she hits the next note in the run. It's not it's not a string of notes slurring together. She has space between them in order to create individual notes, while also creating this slight legato slur into each one. I don't know how she did it. She has articulation and no articulation simultaneously. Makes no sense to me. It sounds very voice-like, but it also replicates the articulation of the harp. Like I said earlier, I need another run with this. There's a lot of things in here, little details I would like to give a lot more attention, knowing what they are, than trying to bounce between a lot of things to take in the whole song like I did for this first time. Now right here, this is already a rather difficult idea. You have two ideas rhythmically and melodically going on in your hands, and you're introducing vocal work on top of it, which isn't going to be easy. Those runs are not something a novice would be able to pull off. Not to mention that harmonically, she's also sitting outside the typical major minor sounds. So, I don't know if it's harder to sing outside of those, but if you casually sing along with popular music on the radio and you decide to take some vocal lessons, I think you'll find that you might find it easier to navigate and find those notes that you hear often and sing along to often, but it's going to be more difficult to find those intervals that you don't. That's coming from someone who isn't a singer, so I don't know how accurate that is, but I do perform vocals on my own music, and it is in tune-ish. Um, and I find it easier to sing melodies in styles I'm familiar with, stuff that I've sung to, in the car with the radio going or something. You give me a key or a mode I don't sing along too often, it takes me a while to find all those intervals. Um, and she's singing outside of the general major minor stuff. So, yeah, putting difficulty on top of difficulty on top of difficulty. I was already fairly impressed at this point. Musically, compositionally, it is nice and simple. If you gave this to two or even three different people, the complexity of all of this diminishes greatly. And when we end up putting just that idea on paper, there's not a lot going on here. We end up revisiting many variations on the ideas we already have at play. The chord progression in our lower foundation doesn't really change at all. The run we hear constantly eventually gets passed to the vocals primarily, with the higher pitched line on the harp doing something totally different. We'll touch on that later. But a lot of what we just explored is like 90% of the composition right there. There is a part she plays on her right hand as a little interlude. We saw it right there at the end that led us to our resolved chord. It's a little, was it triplet movement I did? Triplet eighth notes? Just a run from a higher note down to a lower note. We hear it in the middle of the track as well. There's a nice return to form there. It gives it a nice cyclical feeling. And I think that's it. So again, compositionally, rather simple. The difficulties in the performance. And then, we have the elephant in the room. The thing I obviously haven't talked about yet, but that I was most noticeably slack-jawed about during the reaction. There's a section in here where she decides to put a 3/4 on top of her 4/4. And so the 3/4 brings in a very waltzy pattern. You can hear it in her vocals. When she gets to these moments, there's always an emphasized 1 with a de-emphasized 2 and 3, very waltzy. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't know the lyrics for the section, or maybe I would try to apply that to it, but if you go back and listen, you can hear these groupings. 3 syllables, the first one is always accented, and it doesn't fit typical speech patterns either. Even if it's not the syllable that would be stressed in the word, it's what gets stressed in the song. And it's all very rigid. It doesn't have a nice spoken word flow to it, even though these are just long, lengthy, ongoing run on sentences where she doesn't really ever stop saying what she's talking about. She just keeps moving to the next one and takes these really short breaths in between ideas so that she can continue to, with the flow of this, keeping that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 idea throughout the entire section. Yeah, that idea. But then she's also playing the rigid eighth note run on the harp, which is, last I checked, in 4/4. That's also a different rhythm to the bass note idea, the chord progression. that we have in the lower foundation. So we have that bouncy idea in the foundation, the straight eighth notes, but not constantly playing. You have to leave that room for the root notes in the bass. And then your triple, not even triplet, it's groupings of three. It's 3/4 with an emphasis on beat one in the vocals. Three totally different rhythms here, with one of them being in a different time signature. And so her 1 2 3 1 2 3 is played in the 4/4 of the hands. So what it comes out to is 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4 1. And so it does loop back to where the emphasis is on beat one again. That happens every 3 bars of 4/4. But it also makes it so that her vocal rhythm phases out of sync with the rhythm that her hands are doing. And the hand stuff is already complex as it was. How she kept all of this straight and memorized the essay length of lyrics I know that were in here because she never stopped singing, honestly. This is very Joanna Newsom to put an entire novel's worth of ideas into a single song. She keeps all the lyrics straight. There isn't really much of a rhyme pattern to really fall into. I don't know what was muscle memory and what she focused on, and it was just layers and layers and layers of complexity that any other artist, I think, would say, I could do this. I have proven I could do this. But I think for a live setting, I'd like a group with me. Maybe it's just that effortless to her. She has no problem doing this live every single time. The discipline and performance that goes along with that is mind boggling. Maybe this was a one off performance of this track that she decided to one up everything and do it solo. I have no idea. The fact that it happened at all seems bonkers to me. And this doesn't even get into like what the song is doing musically, what it's about. I honestly couldn't tell you. I was so overwhelmed, mind blown by the performance itself and the complexities and layers and depth of all of the things going on at once coming from one person that they have to worry about, that, harmonic resonance, emotion, atmosphere, all that just blew right by me. It's a beautiful track though. I remember that at least. um, I'm gonna hit some lyrics real quick, get lost in them for a second, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Just what is this lady doing? All right, it's too much for me, man. Joanna, bro, you don't need to be so cryptic with your lyrics. Although I will say at the same time, it does make it rather enjoyable if you're the type of person who loves to decipher poetry. I have had a blast trying to figure out what she's talking about in the past, but today it seems to be about, at least in general, making a fresh start somewhere. But it goes into ideas past that, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it's on about. I think instead I'm just going to plug the podcast, A Hopeless Endeavor. I'll leave a link for it in the description. Episodes 94 through 98. It's a 5-part series, probably about 5 hours in total, where they explore leaving the city, mostly lyrically. They're a fantastic podcast. If you love Joanna Newsom, this is what they do. They spend like weeks at a time exploring single songs as as thoroughly as they can, much better than I could do in 5 minutes of trying to figure out what's going on here. But I do want to bring this up because I just can't stop having my mind blown with this. I found one of the sections that use the three groupings that shift over to the 3 against 4 polyrhythm. And I want you to tell me if you notice something about this. The bridle bends in idle hands and slows your canter to a trot. We mean to stop in increments, but can't commit. We post and sit in impotence. The harder you hit, the deeper you dent. We seek our name, we seek our fame, and our credentials paned in glass, trained to master incidentals, bleach our collar, leech our dollar from our cents. The longer you live, the higher the rent. You'll notice most of those, aside from the two endings, the harder you hit, the deeper the dent, the longer you live, the higher the rent, they're in groups of four. The bridle bends in idle hands and slows your canter to a trot. We mean to stop in increments. So she is doing a three pulse emphasis over four pulse phrases. The layers of rhythmic juxtaposition in this track is immense. It is ridiculous. I don't know how or why she decided to come up with this, but she did, and then she had the guts to say, I'm going to do it live by myself. As much as I've enjoyed her denser, more chaotically layered tracks, I think this is where I am most blown away by her sheer skill as a performer. She has a wild mind for both music and lyrics, and I am typically in awe of her skill in those areas. But I think now, as a performer, is where I think she truly shines because she got on stage, did all of this as deep as it was, as complex and difficult as this performance was, and made it look like she was folding clothes or making, I don't know, a work of simple arts, just something entirely mundane and basic, putting a bed together, sitting down and eating lunch. It looks like it was just a basic part of the day. It was like, okay, this is just another thing on my to-do list today. I can't even imagine this. I get my kid ready for school. I get her there. I put the bed together. I throw some clothes in the dryer. I set up my oatmeal so I can have that midday snack. I record a few videos, and then I put this performance on. Like it's just another basic part of the day. I just I can't imagine, and she just makes it look so effortless. She gets up there, no nerves on her face at all, does this bonkers performance, and then just smiles while everyone's clapping because one, she knows she just nailed it. You do this, and you can't help but smile when you're done. But just like she hits those final notes and just like it's not even like a relief crosses her face like, oh, that was tough, I'm glad I got through it. It's just like, yep, and I got to do this tomorrow and it's no big deal. And just like the sheer confidence of skill, I don't know, man. Those are my thoughts on Joanna Newsom's Leaving the City. Share some skill with the rest of us, man. What are your thoughts on this? I know we didn't get too deep into the meaning of the song and stuff like that, like we normally do, but Newsom always throws a wrench in my plans, and I feel like my Newsom reactions, analyses are very different from most of my others all the time. So, this is just par for the course with her. Let me know your thoughts. If you have interpretations on this, please let me know. I know we didn't get into that. Above the comment section in the description box, there's a link for Linktree in there. Check it out right here. You can check out my music. It's not like that. You can find links to support the channel, link to the Discord server, a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Until next time, remember to be critical and not cynical of the music you listen to. And have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.